I'm telling you, just like checkers.
You can create your
Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm doing a review for FlintLock Siege of Dawn. And this is based on Norza's review. So I just recently beat the game, and I've been hearing a lot of mixed opinions about this game. So I just wanted to do like a quick review because honestly, I like the game. Um, really all the games I've ever played and posted it and uploaded it on YouTube, I really liked. I don't think there's ever been a game that I didn't like. So let's jump into this review. Like and subscribe this video on YouTube, man. Let's go.
He's so fluffy, I'm gonna die.
That's funny.
Ashen was one of the best games of 2018 in my opinion, and when A44 announced FlintLock Siege of Dawn, they had my attention. How do you follow up one of the best indie Souls
I don't think I've ever played that first game you just mentioned, so...
like games ever? FlintLock the Siege of Dawn
Yeah, they did say that this was a Souls-like game.
has to capture some of those same highs, an incredibly tight and satisfying combat system, some complex bosses, and a brand new world and story to get lost.
I don't really think that the bosses were complex. It kind of gave me a lot of Elden Ring, where you had to basically kind of time your dodges and kind of, you know, just to kind of remember the patterns of how the boss fights would go and stuff. Like if they hit this certain type of times, you got to dodge. So they weren't that complicated. I think that the last the last boss was a little bit complicated, at least in the second part. So I get it.
Lost it. FlintLock.
And when I meant Elden Ring kind of vibe, I didn't mean like you have to really look at your stamina more. It's more of a remembering the boss's patterns and, you know, dodging. So
definitely gets a lot right. And when it doesn't get it right, it doesn't overstay.
you see, this is called Sebo. I've never played this game. I just felt like this is kind of like more like it's giving chess games. So I was like, I was never really into playing Sebo in the game. So
It's welcome.
Norza.
The god you unleashed is called Uru. It is his army of the dead that has been laying waste to Dawn, the source of all your suffering.
And how I'm not gonna lie, the graphics, and this is being played on, I'm assuming this is being played on the PS5. The graphics on this is awesome. Visuals is great.
Is it that you know all of this?
Because I am a god too.
Enki.
Let me know any questions you have about the game in the comments down below, and I'll get back to you. Let's start with the graphics and performance.
I was just
Now,
talking about that, but go
I
ahead.
am playing on a PC with a 40.
Ah, so he's playing on PC. The PS5, it still look great. But I know PC gamers, I already know PC gamer visuals is better than the PS5, better than the Xbox. Listen, I still like my PS5. I will not trade it for a PC. I will not. That's just me.
90, so my mileage will definitely vary to yours, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but it runs absolutely flawlessly. Now, it does have DLSS and apparently frame gen. There is an option for it in the settings, but I wasn't able to turn it on and I couldn't figure out why, but you don't really need it here. So with my general setup here, I was able to hit like 120 frames just consistently throughout the game with no hitches, everything on ultra, and didn't have any issues. I actually tried turning it off and still having the game, everything set to ultra and just turning DLS off, and I was still hitting about 45 FPS. So there is definitely a lot of good optimization that has occurred here, and I would fully expect it to run quite well on console systems and other systems that aren't like mine. So it does seem like a lot of optimization has occurred here. I do, however, think that FlintLock is lacking some sort of visual identity in some ways. Now, this is an incredibly good looking video game, right? Like, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying this is like an ugly game to look at. It's just that it's missing some sort of unique visual flair that when you look at the game, you know exactly what game you're looking at. To give you an example, right, with Ashen, you can see Ashen, you know exactly what...
Right, this is the game I was talking about that he first mentioned in the beginning of the game. I mean, beginning of the video. I've never played this.
That game is, because of its just incredible art design, and like the charm of that world is just so strong that it like oozes off the screen here. Whereas with FlintLock, you don't get that same notion here. They've lent into more of a realistic art style that obviously still looks incredible here, but it's just lacking some of that visual identity that I think really came through with Ashen. And I think that that's maybe just part of the studio trying.
I kind of understand where he's saying. I don't know. I mean, I think what he's trying to say, like, the game is so all over the place.
Make a bit more of a mainstream and a bit larger of an experience here than what Ashen was by creating something with this realistic art style that they have done here. And I do love some of the enemy and especially the boss designs, like some of the main bosses just have an absolutely incredible look to them.
Oh,
Unique.
This was Ramua. Was he hard? It took me like 2 tries to try to beat him. But he was pretty good. I think the easiest boss was actually Inaya. She was pretty easy.
Mechanics, which we'll touch on a little bit.
And this was actually the first boss, Ramua.
Later as well, but there's definitely something here. It just doesn't hit that same high in terms of its graphical and artistic vision, in my opinion, that Ashen did.
I bet I could run along the top of it, flit across the paddles.
Bet you whatever's in my pocket, you'll be in the river in a minute.
What's in your pocket?
All right, let's talk about the gameplay itself. Now, there are 2 like major zones that operate like open world areas that you can freely explore and do side quests, find hidden chests for gear and all that like typical things. These areas have a ton of verticality, which is absolutely fantastic because it allows you to leverage the fantastic movement mechanics that you have here. You have like a double jump plus an air dash. Then there are these rifts that you can use to like zoom around areas and get up high.
That double jump really freaking helps, let me tell you. They really help when it comes to like jumping these gaps in these. And to be honest, like this particular part right here, and then other parts of the game where there was a lot of mountains, a lot of climbing, and also the rifts jumping back and forth. It kind of reminds me of that game called what was it? Forsaken? It's called Forspoken. So certain parts of this game do remind me of Forspoken. There's a few things. Both of the characters are black. They both use magic to teleport around. Majority of the areas that these both games have and that are visual, a lot of mountains, a lot of field, a lot of open space. So that's why this game really reminds me of Forspoken, to be honest.
Higher or lower or like access areas once you've unlocked the shortcuts, etc. But there's plenty of movement that you'll be doing throughout Flintlock, which just has such a great flow to it as you're moving around and doing some of these platforming puzzles or just playing the game and you're up really high and you're like, oh, I wonder if I can get down there and find something down there, or vice versa, like looking upwards. Both of these 2 major areas, there are more by the way, it's just 2 major open world areas, are contained with an overall size and scope without too much like padding of that like open worldy stuff, right, where you just wander around in like blank spaces just to like increase the game's overall runtime. Beyond the odd hamlet, which is like an enemy camp that you might actually need to clear, I actually enjoyed these a lot, by the way, because it really helps with some of the game's pacing by giving you some tougher areas with like a little mini boss at the end. When you're actually out exploring, it's usually like 1 or 2 enemies that you'll run into together, which are very easy to beat, and having these hamlets just gives you a bit more challenge in those areas. Now, it took me about 22 hours to complete the game, all the side quests. I collected most of the hidden banners.
So damn, it takes about, honestly, when I played the game, I didn't do none of the side quests. I only did the main missions because I really wanted to know what this game was about. Because when you read the title Flintlock, it's like, what the hell is a flintlock? The Siege of Dawn. It's like, and then you see a fox with a girl with a rifle and an axe, and it's like, who are they about to fight? Like, what is this game about? So that's why I didn't focus on the side missions. I'm more focused on the main missions because I was like, I just want to know what's going on. So come to find out, it's about beating these gods, getting the land back, you know, before they take over the world. And then the side quests, I just felt like it was I think it was basically favors to do for people in different towns and try to help them out with certain things or whatever. So I definitely understand. But damn, it takes 22 hours exactly to do side missions and main missions. I think it took me like less than 10 hours or something to do the main mission. So
collectibles, and did half of the Seppo games because
again, I never played these damn games.
Oh my gosh, I really did not like Seppo. Now this is a coin board.
It's called Sebo, not Seppo.
Game that runs on like a triangle based system that essentially you need to create a triangle with your coins to essentially like win your offensive round, and then on the defensive round, you need to prevent your like
It's like playing checkers, bro. What?
AI opponent from doing the same thing. This game has very little depth and complexity that overall I feel like this shouldn't be in the game. I kind of understand why it's there, to add a bit more uniqueness to the flair, a bit more of a pacing mechanic where you can do something different.
And it's funny, like when I was exploring the caves, I was collecting like these rare coins, and I'm like, I'm assuming these coins do something for you, like in the several games. I don't know.
Different, but there isn't enough depth here or just general fun for it to really exceed, right? Especially when the rewards here for like actually winning these encounters is just like 1,000 reputation at its absolute max, which you can get from just hitting a few enemies. Like you don't get anything from that. You can get some unique coins by finding them in wells.
You see, I got that from a well. I think I got that one specifically, and then I got another one in another well. I think before the Uru boss fight, there's another one in the well,
which you can then use in these encounters, but it's just not enough.
I'm glad that he's explaining how to play this game, because I kid you not, I looked at like previews of this game of playing Sebo, and I'm like, I ain't doing that shit.
Complexity here or intelligence in the AI to create anything that's unique. Realistically here, like on your attack turns, you just need to get a coin in like the middle, and then you just essentially wait to see if the AI gets out of the way so that you create your triangle, right?
Deadass checkers.
Sometimes the AI just like won't get out of the way. It'll just move its squares in the corner like back and forth for like waste all of your turns, and you just like physically cannot create a triangle, right? And then if you do pass that, you've then got to defend, which you just essentially do the same thing. Because these boards are so small, it's extremely easy to just see like, okay, there is like 3 spaces here that are the only way you can create a triangle. You just sit on those spaces for the entire game, and sometimes the AI will just literally move the same coin back and forth, and then you just wait for essentially the game to end, right? I just found this whole system and experience to be extremely disappointing, especially when you take into account the backing soundtrack in these moments, right? There's a lot of button presses just to even get into the game, and then you're sort of waiting, and it just hasn't got a really quick, sharp, snappy flow to it, which is just
so complicated.
Really disappointing. That and funny NPCs that you interact with that have some like just really funny and interesting dialogue.
You see, that's my game right there. The Queen's Blood from Final Fantasy Rebirth. Yes. Now that I played with a lot. That I did play.
There's also a deck building element to that, and funny NPCs.
Right here, Queen's Blood, Rebirth, Final Fantasy. Now this card game was pretty, I kid you not, this game is all about strategy. It's all about having the right cards, having the best strategy. And funny enough, it's like whenever you put a certain card, like it's always going to be your first turn. Every time you put a card down in whatever column, the computer is going to match that. He's like, oh, you're going to put one on the upper right? Well, I'm going to put one on the upper right too. You're going to put one in the middle? I'm going to put one in the middle. It's all about tricking the computer and just having a strategy in this particular game. I really liked Queen's Blood. I think it took me like about maybe a few times to like beat certain opponents on the game, but Queen's Blood is an important, essential thing to play. Sorry, I don't know, my voice got like that. It's such an important game to play in Rebirth, because sometimes you do have to defeat opponents in certain towns in order to get into the main story. But I really like to play. I wouldn't play Sebo. I will play this, Queen's Blood. I don't know what caught my eye on that, but yeah, I really like that.
That you interact with that have some like just really funny and interesting dialogue. When you talk to them, that just really adds to the depth of the overall card game.
I'm not gonna lie, I really liked the music that they had for the boss fights. It kind of had like a different element to it. Like usually in boss fights, like in games like this, usually have like some kind of like rock type of music playing. In this particular boss fight and the others in the game, it's more like rock, like, or techno mixed with hip hop or something like that. So it was pretty cool. So I'm going to try and avoid too many comparisons to Ashen here. I've already talked about Ashen a couple of times.
Like, I absolutely love that game,
Oh
and
my
this is the
God.
second game that A44 have released, so it's very hard not to draw comparisons from their only other title that they have. Now, Ashen was trying very hard to be a Dark Souls, but a more casual Souls-like experience. It oozed that visual flair and design flair that I was talking about. FlintLock's inspiration clearly isn't drawn from those same Dark Souls inspiration here. There are plenty of Souls elements. There is a very clear inspiration and connection to another game series that has a serious and brooding main character.
Yes, yes. And thank you for mentioning God of War, because I actually did say that at the end of my last video when I beat FlintLock. And I did say, and I knew somebody was going to compare FlintLock with God of War. I did say this. There's a comparison because Kratos has an axe, FlintLock has an axe as well, and he has the blades. But in her case, she has a gun. So yes, there is a comparison right there.
Who wields a cool axe that's followed around by a little god with a semi-open world elements and like a strong action gameplay. Those comparisons really aren't lost on me, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like, the combat system here is definitely quite different to God of War, leaning into more of those Souls-like structures with reputation taking the place of Souls, but you can increase your reputation gain by avoiding taking damage, creating a bit more of a reward for your skillful gameplay when you can avoid damage, whether that be by parrying or interrupting or dodging. Now, combining those elements in ways in encounters is where some of that skill ceiling and the challenge comes into play. Right now, when
I do like the
this is work,
I do like the special attack moves where it's kind of like the camera closes up on her and it's like she's about to do like a special move and whack the hell out of the person. And like, I just like that, like the little like zoom in and zoom out kind of special attack moves.
working really well when you're
Like
getting
right here,
those
you see?
interrupt timings happening. So you interrupt those red attacks with like your firearm, or you're parrying these attacks with your axe and then follow up with counter attacks, or just like dodging out of attack animations. It does feel really good, but it does take a while to get to that point where it feels really strong and satisfying based on the progression in the skill system, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. But
the skill, damn, let me go back a little bit. The skill system is very crucial to this game because that's literally where you get all your attack power and stuff like that.
Take a while to get to that point where it feels really strong and satisfying based on the progression.
And the most important thing is that you have to look at, you see this right here where he has 11,000. That's basically, he has 11,000 points for reputation. So it is kind of like Dark Souls where if you do die in a particular way, I mean, in a particular spot, you lose all that reputation, right? Reputation. And it goes back to 0, but you can actually go back to the same place where you died and recover your reputation back. And then you can still continue to get more reputation. As long as you have enough reputation, you'll be able to get whatever skills that you can get. Like right here, the beginning ones and the low ones are like, they're between 1,000, 2,000. Once you get to this section right here, it goes up to like 3,000 to 4,000 right here, like between 6 to 12,000, and over here it's probably like between like 50 to 80,000. So it's like different it's different percentages in each of these skills, but it's very, very important to make sure that you have, you know, all the reputation that you need in order to get these skills. Killing enemies is not the only way to get reputation as well. If you guys like loot around, there's like little statues that they're kind of like Indian crossed, and they're like this, I think. I'm not really too sure. I don't know if you guys can see the camera. They're like this, and then there's like a smoke like flame, and that's how you can also get reputation. It's not much, but it's still reputation.
In the skill system, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. But something that I did notice is that sometimes these combat telegraphs are very poorly shown. Like, enemies will start winding up attacks and they won't have like the red indicator to say it's an interrupt attack, not a parry. That like indicator will appear very late in that attack animation, and then by that time that it has switched to a red indicator, it's like too late to actually interrupt it with your firearm, and you're like,
well, there has been an instance where I was in a town and I was trying to defeat one of the enemies. I think it was like a skinnier version of like the soldiers, and they had a helmet or whatever. They had like a purple feather or something like that. So they were walking in front of me, but they were looking the other way, and I kept hitting them and hitting them. They would not defend themselves, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Is this a glitch? So I get it.
Like halfway through a parry animation or something, and you just end up taking that damage. That can be quite frustrating. And I'm sure some of that stuff will get cleaned up in future patches, like once the game is out, but it was just something that I noticed sometimes that did cause some frustration if like I triggered the wrong sort of parry or interrupt, depending on what the animation was. When you do get those timings down, especially on certain bosses, the feedback here is just so good. Like it's got that really good rewarding feedback that you need from a parry system, where you feel like that dopamine hit from like triggering that parry, following up with that counter strike. One of my favorite bosses was one of the gods, where you have to trigger like a multiple parry to actually get like the counter attack, and just that animation when it's like swinging and happening, really loved the feedback and just how that felt. Like it was absolutely so strong. And it is a little disappointing how many unique encounters there are in FlintLock though. A lot of the new enemies as they're introduced will be some sort of a mini boss, and then you'll eventually see them just like out in the world and that sort of thing. And I think overall there's maybe 5 or 6 actual unique encounters that you only experience once in the game, and those are some of the absolute highlights of the game. In the exact same way it was with Ashen, A44 are absolutely incredible at creating these boss fights with unique mechanics.
Yeah, they have mini boss fights and they have like the gods or the main boss fights. You know, so I did also like the different kinds of enemies that we encounter in this game as well,
that have really great backing soundtracks that, you know, feel so rewarding to actually fight. And all of these like major god fights and unique encounters, absolutely loved. I'm not going to show you all of them for spoilers, but they are really, really strong and some of the best content in the game that are really worth experiencing, especially once you have progressed and leveled up all of your skills. So speaking of those skills and progression systems, now you will gain that reputation like we touched on earlier. And if you die, you lose that reputation. You got to go back and grab that bad boy. But what's unique about this is that multiplier effect, right? That when you avoid damage, that multiplier goes up and you gain more reputation from fighting enemies and the like.
That too. That's how you can get reputation
from
also.
Completing main and side quests or some of the other smaller activities throughout the world, you'll get a little bit as well. This reputation can be spent in a multitude of ways. The primary way you'll spend it is on your skill points. You have the 3 skill trees here: powder, magic, and steel, all focusing on a specific part of Nor's kit. Powder for firearm, magic for the magic stuff with Enki, and then steel for the actual melee attacks here. Now, as you progress and actually learn some of these skills and get further in the game, the combat system really comes together. You get a really strong sense of that progression element, especially once you start combining some of the gear you find and the armor synergy bonuses you get from there. I just like absolutely loved like the fire axe. I essentially used it throughout the entire game, just like set everyone on fire, had an absolute great time. And then I was also
I had the same weapon. I actually liked it. I actually upgraded it to legendary. So
using Enki's ability, one of the curse stones that can actually poison enemies. So I was burning them, I was poisoning them, and I did feel
the curse stones that Enki, like if you see right here, you see how the top of his head is green. So throughout the world, so far I found like 3 stones. So there's the red ruby, the emerald was just this one, and the gold stone. So they do different things. Like this one, since he has the green one on, Enki's able to poison your enemies while you're attacking them, as long as you're pressing triangle. So those stones are really nicely beneficial whenever you're attacking enemies and stuff. So whenever he's helping you, that's pretty cool too.
a strong connection to that progression element as it did eventually come together, which in the early stages of the game, especially before you get that double jump and the air dash and stuff, it does feel kind of clumsy and clunky, but once you get that point, start getting those skills and progressing, it does really come together. You can also spend this reputation on upgrading your weapons and your firearms, plus your long-range weapons and your grenades as well. There's just a whole lot of stuff in this like equipment kit, right? You've got 3 armor slots, you've got 2 melee weapons you can have equipped at any time, you've got 2 long-range weapons that you can equip at a time, you've got a pistol you can equip, you've got grenades, you've also got Enki's abilities as well. There's just a lot of stuff here.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Enki has, his stuff is called witherings. So his witherings do like different things, like it's basically his magic. So he has like his magic that he does, and then he has his stones, and then you have like everything else, like your, you know, your, the way that your appearance, your weapons, your gear, your attachments also?
Well, there's also not a whole lot of different gear you can get. There's about 5 to 6 different sets in total. And I would have liked if they, say, for example, removed like the long range weapons, which I barely used and didn't feel connected to the rest of the combat experience, as you're only really going to use them before a combat encounter because of how slow a lot of their animations are, and they really take you out of the combat flow, where the pistol you can just use while you comboing with your like melee attacks and everything, and you can't really just like shoot something from a distance. And it is cool when you see that, like, you know, slow motion shot when you use your musket and like one shots enemies, but beyond that there isn't really a whole lot of point to these long range weapons. Like, I just would have preferred them to maybe be removed in favor of creating more combat variety in terms of the melee weapons that are available to you, some of the armor sets, so you can create different synergies in that way. But even still, with the limited amount of sets and things you have available to you, there is a really strong combat system here that is really rewarding once you've unlocked a lot of these skills and combining the different explosion and magic elements, as well as some of the firearm skills that can be used together in like this really interesting like chain together way that just is fun and really fills that like power fantasy feeling that you want from these like Souls-like action RPGs sort of games.
Bitter years since the dead broke through the door, I've promised you peace. Today, I'm making good on it.
So in FlintLock, you play as Nor Vanek, an elite member of the Coalition army joined by Enki, a mysterious fox-like companion in their quest for vengeance against the gods. That's basically the overall setup here, and A44 have referred to this as like a FlintLock fantasy that they've essentially created. I did really like Nor and Enki's relationship through the game. Like, Nor isn't your typical wisecrack main character that just cracks jokes the whole time. There is an intelligence and a maturity to Nor that's reflected in the way that they have actually been at war with the gods and the dead for quite some time here, and that's really shown in the way that she treats other people and even talks to Enki. There's a seriousness about her in the way that she treats the world and herself as well, and she's not too afraid to have a joke with Enki though once their relationship does build and they do connect. And
You still look like
I honestly think that because she met Enki, she's become a little bit more softer, because she knows, like, if I'm in trouble and then I need to defeat an enemy, I know Enki's gonna have my back. So it seems like, I mean, she does get the protection from like the army, because obviously she's in the army. She's trying to protect, you know, the town and then the captain and stuff like that. And then I guess with Enki, it's a little different, where she's able to be a little bit more softer, be kind of a little bit more feminine, instead of the, you know, the strict militant mind that she, you know, that she portrays and everything, and just being strict all the time. And she's a little bit more softer with Enki now.
a tiny fox thing.
Sandstorms would cease so I could pass. The
Or maybe she never had a pet before. Who knows?
sky when I'd
Especially a pet that a pet that's never spoken.
howl.
Then how?
Pardon?
I want to hear you. How?
That's the first time I ever heard her laugh.
you see that journey from their first meeting to the very end and the way that they kind of come together. And I enjoyed that story and learning about Enki and the mystery behind him and the connection that he has to the other gods as well as Nor and the world itself. Now, the main story is quite easy to understand, but the overall world lore around that is quite difficult to understand or piece together, as it's not really given to you in any meaningful way. You will occasionally read notes and stuff that gives you some of that information, and there's a lot of hints and references to.
I'm sorry, but I never read none of those notes. I'll collect them just to get like the points and stuff, but I never read them.
Events in the past.
And I know they give hints to the past and more to the story and stuff like that, which I should have been reading, but
Or connections between characters in the world that these people live in, but none of that exposition is actually given to you as the player. I would have liked maybe a tiny little bit more of that. I can see why it's not here in terms of actually just wanting to make a game that doesn't heavily rely on just like spitting out lore to you and stuff. It's not really the focus here, right? This is a journey between Nor and Enki and their experiences as they go out into the world, as well as the combat, and it's not taking you out of that by just giving you massive exposition dumps. Totally get that, but I would have loved just like more of those little notes that you can find throughout the world that give you some of that more information if you want to go that route, but it doesn't force you to. Where Ashen stood on its own for its incredible art design and really tight combat system, A44 have aimed for a significantly more widespread appeal with Flintlock, with a defined main character and the cute little fox friend to sort of pull people in, referring to it more as an action RPG than a Souls-like, though from the moment you play the game, you'll definitely feel those Souls-like elements, and trying to appeal to a more mainstream audience isn't a bad thing, right? Especially in the volatile games industry that we are currently in. I completely understand the decision, and as an absolute stan of Ashen and the incredible highs that that game achieves, I was a little let down in some of those elements in Flintlock that just didn't seem to receive those same highs. It is still a really good game that I do recommend you play, especially at that cheaper price point. A lot of the negatives here that I have touched on don't last too long, and you can avoid them like Seppo, like I mentioned as well. It's much easier to forgive some of those elements that don't reach those massive high points for a game that isn't $70 US or over $100 like most games are here in Australia, right?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, when I saw the price of this game, so I kind of looked up the game now that I beat it. GameStop has it for like 39, I think, or 40. I think they have it for 44. As of like PlayStation, I think because I have Plus, it only came out to 35. So there's like different types of prices for this game. There's not like a set price. I've seen this game priced at like 45, 49. I'm like, I think I just bought this game for like $35, to be honest. So I honestly think that, you know, buying this game for $35 or even a little bit cheaper than the regular PlayStation game, $70, I think it's worth it. You know, it's not that the game is not that long if you just play the main mission. So,
and obviously if you've got Game Pass, this is absolutely a must play. The combat system is worth the price of admission on its own, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys.
So this is the end of his review. So yeah, overall, I would say that the game is a really nice game. Story was well written. You know, there were some times where I kind of got confused as to where I was going. But it's common sense. You kind of figure it out because, I mean, every time you do a mission, the little triangle is going to show you like, okay, this is where you got to go, right? As the title says of my video, is it worth the money to play this game? I think that it is, because it's so cheap and because the game is so short. I think it is. I believe it is. I only play the main missions in this game. I didn't play no side missions. I didn't play no Sebo. I didn't play none of that. I did get some weapon upgrades. I did get some stones for Enki. You know, I did get Nor, like, you know, different. I changed her appearance different times. I got her like, you know, rare items or like elite items and stuff like that. But overall, I think that the game was pretty good. I like the boss fights, the mini boss fights as well. And I also love the relationship that, you know, Nor and Enki developed throughout the whole, you know, journey. You know, at first she's like, who the hell is this fox? Why? He's telling me he's a god. How is he going to help us, you know, fight for our land and get rid of this god? And, you know, at first she wasn't really trusting of him because he wasn't really telling her the whole truth about what was going on. And then I guess he started opening up and was like, you know what, that's not right. Let me open up to this girl. She's trying to save her land. You know, I want to help her because I want to get rid of the gods myself because they're not doing so well in the below. So let me do that. And so, you know, and then she became more soft, more feminine with Enki. And they just developed like this companion relationship that was so good. And then at the end, it was like, she's like, I'm not going to let you go in there by yourself. I'm going to fight by your side. You have my back this whole time. Let me be your back too. So I think overall the game was very well done. I can't wait to see what other games A44 will be doing. I hope they do a part 2 to this game. And that's it for my review, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely appreciate it. And let me know what you guys think about this game. Is it worth the money? Are you guys gonna pick this up? If you guys did you guys play the main missions and the side missions? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's go, and I'll see you in the next one.